This month marks the 8-year anniversary of the release of the one-time partial audit that Dr. Ron Paul got for us. He was able to actually get Republicans and Democrats, which included Senator John McCain and Senator Bernie Sanders, to actually agree to do a one-time partial audit of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve lawyers were kicking and screaming about it. The lawyers vowed to never allow it again. They have vowed that it is national security to never allow it again. And this might be one of the only times we actually get a really, truly honest glimpse behind the curtain, behind the Wizard of Oz, the great machinery there, inside, behind the curtain there of Oz. So, I routinely hear on a daily basis from the financial professionals I speak to, hedge fund managers, money managers, mainstream financial journalists, people who comment under my videos, that this is a conspiracy theory, that I'm making up lies, that this audit never happened, that the Fed routinely audits itself, that the Fed doesn't have any currency swaps, almost zero currency swaps outstanding. Okay? These people are either lazy, they are lying, or they are just dumb, or they have not done their homework. And the real report was released on, I have this Lou Rockwell article up from August 18th of 2011, but the actual report from the U.S. Government Accountability Office, or GAO, was a 266-page partial audit of the Federal Reserve. The link to the document is in this Lou Rockwell article by Michael McKay from August 18, 2011. If you want to read the actual report, it is 266 pages long in PDF, but the real juicy stuff is on page 144 of the PDF. It's labeled page 131 through 133. It's a table talking about these trillions of dollars in loans that banks in the US, Europe, and Japan got basically interest-free. Okay? Citigroup, Morgan Stanley, Merrill Lynch, Bank of America, Barclays, Bear Stearns, Goldman Sachs, the Royal Bank of Scotland, Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank was only number, I think, 9 here on the list of the most bailout money. Okay, and we all know the problems with Deutsche Bank. Things are so bad with Deutsche Bank that one of their top customers, the hedge fund Renaissance Technology, has been pulling money out for the last few months. That Renaissance Technology, this high-frequency trading hedge fund, this quant firm, doesn't trust Deutsche Bank anymore either. Okay, so if you want to read this, you doubt this, I have been told, this is a long rant. I am fed up with hearing it from lazy, brainwashed, stupid people that the audit never happened. Okay, it did. It should be talked about. It should be talked about more. We owe a lot of debt, an enormous debt of gratitude to Dr. Ron Paul. Okay, he fought for this for a very long time, and we only got a partial one. So $16 trillion we found out from this one-time partial audit of the Federal Reserve. That may never happen again. It may never happen again, unless they want us to know a number to give people confidence that the banking system won't implode. So $16 trillion worth of emergency loans, in air quotes, that may or may not ever be paid back. Some of it was probably paid back. Some of it will probably never be paid back. We probably will never know the true amounts that were paid back or not paid back, or the real number. The real number could be much larger than 16 trillion. We have heard experts like Jim Rickards estimate that the number over the last decade that has been given out in currency swaps and emergency liquidity and bailouts is over 65 trillion. And that's not even counting the credit bubble in China, the euro-dollar market, the currency swap emergency loans probably papered over. It's talked about in this report by the GAO. It's talked about how the commercial paper market was papered over. The banks were bailed out. Foreign corporations were bailed out. Foreign governments were bailed out. Foreign central banks were bailed out. American corporations, multinational corporations were bailed out. Okay? This was the main liquidity pump. And I get emails from people that, you don't know what you're talking about. Jeffrey Snyder is the true expert here. Everything is about the euro dollar. Okay, he is an expert. I respect him. He's a very smart guy. He knows way more than me about the Eurodollar. I've listened to Eurodollar seasons 1 and 2 and Macro Voices. I highly recommend you listen to both. However, he has said that the Eurodollar market is about $16 trillion. Well, guess what? $16 trillion was created by the Federal Reserve in a very short amount of time for emergency liquidity and bailout programs. Covert quantitative easing, or QE, backdoor bailouts, that the Eurodollar market took a very, very long time to get to those $16 trillion in loans outstanding for Eurodollars. Well, guess what? The currency swaps that these central banks did, the emergency loans that the Federal Reserve gave out, trillions of dollars in a matter of weeks. Trillions of dollars in a matter of weeks. Okay? And if there's more problems in the Eurodollar, more problems in commercial paper, more problems in European banks, more problems in other credit markets, most likely the solution, and I'm using air quotes here, the main liquidity pump to paper over these problems will be central bank currency swaps or rules changes. With like what happened with the banks in March of 2009, how the FASB, the Financial Accounting Standards Board, allowed the banks to not mark assets mark to market. They were allowed to mark their assets to whatever value. So the combination of the Federal Reserve doing the emergent $16 trillion in emergency bailouts that we found out from the GAO in the one-time partial audit, and the banks having the accounting laws changed, that really helped. And this is the environment we're in, where the people in power, the economic and political elites, the politicians and the central bankers, and the other economic and political elites, the bureaucrats, the people running the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, the World Bank, all these other central banks, that they decide what the rules changes, and normally they don't even tell us. They only tell us sometimes, and sometimes it may only be partial truths or half truths. And they don't tell us what's getting bailed out. So if you're a short seller, and I have friends who are managing money who were short bank stocks and home builders, the rules were changed on you during 2008. People who had puts were okay. People who were outright short certain stocks were screwed. Okay? And unfortunately, I used to pay a lot more attention to the alternative media, to the gold community, and guess what? Almost no one is covering this partial audit of the Federal Reserve. And I think this is more important than just about anything, because we actually got the truth. And the truth is a steaming pile of garbage. It's toxic. Because they printed $16 trillion in emergency loans, and then we don't know if any of it was ever paid back. And that was on the behalf of on the supposed behalf of the American taxpayer, the American saver. They said it was to promote national security and to maintain the global financial system, and that benefits Americans. Well, does stealing $16 trillion and devaluing the dollar, hurting our purchasing power to maintain foreign banks, foreign corporations, foreign governments, foreign central banks, how does that exactly benefit Americans so much? Especially when the standard of living is declining rapidly through stagflation and other problems. Okay, more people in the gold community should be talking about this. More people in the alternative media should be talking about this. But you know what? There's lots and lots of deniers that this ever happened, that the audit ever happened. Okay, I hear it every day. In the comment section of my videos, there's one or two people every day who post garbage. Call them out. Send them links. And guess what? The articles for these, almost all these articles on Google search and some of the other search engines, a lot of them have been removed from page 1. If you search Federal Reserve partial audit 16 trillion or something along those lines, it is very, very difficult to find in the first page or two. You may see an obscure reference on a message board with no article link. They have scrubbed a lot of these articles unless you are exactly searching for a specific website and a specific article. A lot of these articles detailing this, how all this purchasing power and currency and credit was created out of nothing in a very short amount of time. They have basically scrubbed these stories. The stories, I looked through this. I made a Facebook post about this in the Wall Street for Main Street Facebook group. So on September 5th, 2018, I spent about half an hour to 45 minutes looking for these articles. Okay, I wanted to go back and check because I knew that the anniversary was coming up. And I literally looked through multiple search engines for the links to the articles, and I looked for Zero Hedge articles on this, and it was tough to find these things. I think the Zero Hedge article is near gone. And a lot of these articles are buried. So you might find one article or two articles on page 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 of search if you're lucky. Okay? And I think this is probably the most important piece of truth we have gotten in a very, very long time. And according to this Lou Rockwell article by Michael McKay, the Federal Reserve has not had a full, honest, transparent audit since the Eisenhower administration in 1953, almost 60 years, well, when the article was written in 2011, it was almost 60 years ago, so it's more than 60 years. And yet there's even libertarians, there's even Austrian school economists, because I tried to talk about this to the Austrians in Finance group on my Yahoo, there's this Yahoo email newsletter thing for Austrians in finance, financial professionals who work on Wall Street or hedge fund guys or people at like real estate who are Austrians. And I tried to bring this up. And you know what? They're even denying it. They even deny that this happened. Almost all of them. None of them believe it. I send them links. I send them copies of the report to the audit. They don't want to hear it either. They think it's bullshit. It happened. There was a partial audit released. There's links to it. The search engines don't want it up there. Probably the Federal Reserve, this is an educated guess, paid to have it scrubbed. Most of it's gone. And they will not allow another partial or full audit. I very seriously doubt we'll see another one. Okay? I know a lot of very important people listen to this podcast, a lot of larger YouTube channels than mine and podcasts. This should be talked about more. You have a larger platform than mine. It needs to be discussed more. The Ron Paul Liberty Report needs to talk about this more. The anniversary of this is coming up. The system collapsed, and it was papered over with unfathomable amounts of fiat currency and credit in the tens of trillions of dollars. And yes, the central banks have created around, it was 21 trillion. I think it's a little bit below that. It's around $20 trillion officially in their balance sheets. And yes, Catherine Austin Fitts and Dr. Mark Skidmore have done excellent work. That $21 trillion looks like has been stolen by Wall Street and the Pentagon Department of Defense. However, it took many years for that money to be printed and stolen. And this amount, these emergency bailouts, these things were done in a very, very short period of time. And there is almost nothing that can stop them from happening again. So I found in that Facebook group post for my Facebook group, I found about a dozen of these articles, and it took me a long time to find them because you know what? They don't want them to be found, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're gone soon. So Zero Hedge needs to cover this. Get the word out to Zero Hedge that they need to write articles that the 8-year anniversary of that is coming up. Tell them to put this video up there. Actually, I don't even care if they put this video up there. Tell them that someone there needs to write articles and bring up that was the one time we got to look behind the curtains to see the Wizard of Oz for what he truly is. This needs to be the front page story on Zero Hedge on the 8-year anniversary. So send them some emails. Remind them. It's coming up on July 21st. Jesse, I have used multiple search engines. I check with Google, DuckDuckGo, etc. And you know what? The ability to find a lot of these articles is just not there. You can find 1 or 2 articles if you go through 5 or 6 pages of search. It is very difficult. Hey, Blackstar, thank you for putting the link to the report. But the link to the report is also in the Lou Rockwell article, and it is elsewhere. There was people who covered it at the time, and the old articles do not really come up in search anymore. It is a shame, a tragedy. I think it's done intentionally. I think the Federal Reserve paid, or the large banks paid, to have these scrubbed from search engines. And they're not fully scrubbed, but they're almost totally scrubbed, and I would not be surprised if they are gone in the next few years, if there is no traces of the articles. Okay, well, that's pretty much it for my rant. I only wanted to do a short rant for this video, but we are coming up on the 8-year anniversary on July 21st of the release of the 266-page report of the one-time partial audit that Ron Paul fought very, very hard for. He was in Congress for a long time. He fought to audit the Fed for a very long time. People thought he was a Looney Tune. And finally, there was enough pressure built up with the bailouts and TARP and all that during the 2008 financial crisis to finally get Republicans and Democrats to actually agree on something and to actually agree to a one-time partial audit of the Fed. And unfortunately now, the Fed is fighting tooth and nail. They will not allow this again. I very seriously doubt they will allow this again. It would be nice to live in a world where there's more transparency, where there's not blatant outright fraud and theft, left, right, center, up, down, sideways. But this is the world we live in. We live in a world now where 10 minutes, 20 minutes of research can find you an article, and people send me emails and people comment under my videos claiming that I'm lying and that this never happened. It did happen. And there's no proof that any of that money, because there was no announcements, there's no proof that any of that money was ever paid back. And some of the banks, according to the partial audit, got hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars in free loans. And that's on top of the foreign banks, foreign corporations, foreign governments, foreign central banks, American corporations, multinational corporations that also got bailed out. And the report also talks about how the commercial paper market was papered over. And this is my educated guess, that when the euro-dollar market broke, because it said that the audit started in 2007, from 2007 to 2010 only, the partial audit, that Jeffrey Snyder said that the euro-dollar market started breaking in 2007. So my guess is that the currency swaps and the other bailouts were given to paper over the breaking of the euro-dollar market as well. So we're looking at, not counting the China's credit bubble, which is almost $50 trillion, we're looking at tens of trillions of dollars created by all these central banks when you add up how much is officially on central bank balance sheets, plus the $21 trillion stolen that Catherine Austin Fitts and Dr. Mark Skidmore have uncovered, plus the currency swaps that we found out part of it in the one-time partial audit of the Federal Reserve that we will probably never see again. So when you add up the China credit bubble plus all of those other things I just mentioned, you're looking at potentially almost, depending upon the estimates you use, $100 trillion or more in fiat currency, digital fiat currency, debt-based fiat currency, and credit that has been created out of thin air since the 2008 financial crisis to basically hyperinflate asset prices and to cause people enormous pain with stagflation and taxes. And then capitalism, of course, gets blamed because it's the punching bag. It gets blamed for pretty much everything nowadays. Any problems in society at the individual level, family level, lower levels of government, and federal level or societal level, capitalism gets blamed for everything. So while the people in power loot and plunder, they can easily just blame capitalism for it then. And none of this is capitalism, because capitalism involves bankruptcy. Capitalism involves failure. Okay, guys, well, that's it for this short little rant. I think I've had enough for this, and I will attach links to these articles. Hopefully, they are not scrubbed. You let me know, though. So if these articles are scrubbed, comment below the video later, and I'm sure in the future people comment if the links are broken. But I have a bad feeling that these links and articles will eventually all go away, because you already have a lot of people, including libertarians, including Austrian school economists, including financial professionals that claim to be Austrian school economists, that claim that this never happened, that the one-time partial audit of the Federal Reserve is a lie. It's a conspiracy theory. It's made up. It never happened. Okay, that's it for now.